Hey, welcome to On the Sideline. My name is Vin Blaine. I'm your host for today and further on. Today we have quite an interesting program for you. We have 4 top-class coaches from around the world. One from the UK, QPR in the UK. We have Martin Hamill from Germany, and we have Bart. And Bart, I will let you pronounce your last name for me, right? So we have Bart.
Yeah, it's a real Dutch name, Van Rooyen.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about youth development in all the three different countries. And so first, I want to just ask each coach to introduce himself. So I'll start off with you, Bart.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Bart. I'm 35 years old. I work at the Vitesse Academy in Holland. For 15 years now. I have my UEFA A license, and I'm head of the foundation phase of Vitesse.
Okay, thanks, Bart. And we move to Martin from Germany.
Yeah, my name is Martin. I'm 37, and I'm coaching kids and youth teams since 2011 now, so going into my 11th year. I'm a talent-based coach at the local talent base of the National FA here in Leipzig, Germany. And I've been a lecturer for football for children since 2015. Also, I'm a regular listener of the On the Sideline podcast, so it's really an honor and a privilege to be on this show, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
And I should add that something that you didn't say, Martin. Martin is German, but he thinks he's Jamaican. All right?
Okay.
Okay, so let me introduce Lee. Let's introduce yourself, please.
How are we doing? My name's Lee Hayes. I'm 37 years old, and I'm the lead youth YDP coach at Queen's Park Rangers Academy. Been coaching for about 12 years now at different academies, and been a PE teacher. So yeah, that's me. And I've been proud of listening and tuning in to On the Sideline.
All right, thanks much, guys. So we have a task ahead of us now. Youth development, youth football in your own countries. Interesting, because that is an area that a lot of people around the world pays a lot of attention to, and that is something that is understood. So we're going to look at. We have 3 areas we're going to look at today. We're going to look at talent identification, and then we're also going to go to the role that education welfare plays in the performance part of the youngsters, and then we're going to, at the end, we take a look at planning sessions. The approach should be, as I say, it's a free flowing conversation. I might go to first. I might start off first with one particular. So don't feel pressured when I call on you to get the ball rolling. But first, let me thank all the my listeners and guests who are particularly from somewhere around the world. Thanks for joining OTS Live. We will be presenting from different times, people from different areas of the game. You know, maybe sometime you might see a referee, who knows? You know, but it's a little different than On the Sideline podcast, where we do all coaching education. But in saying that, though, this platform also will lean heavily towards coaching education. But I think sometimes we have to get into the other areas of the game, administrative area, because it plays a big role in that too. I always say, and I think maybe Audio may agree with me, that the team around the team is a lot more important sometimes than the team, what you do on the pitch, you know, the organization around the field. So I think that for my listeners, it would be good to be able to get them an idea how a club is run, what happens at a different level, because a majority of my listeners, and maybe all, are not attached to senior clubs, to top clubs, and I think that will give them an idea of how they can go about, their philosophy, how they do about how they approach their training, right? So I'm gonna just throw it out now. Let us look at talent identification, and maybe I should start with Germany.
Yeah, sure.
Because I start with you, Martin, because you are integrally involved with that area in Germany. Explain to me how in Germany you get that going.
Yeah, so first of all, I think we need to clarify that I cannot speak for the entire country, so we'll only look at the small part that I handle. I think it's relevant to understand that the talent identification program, or the attempt to introduce young talented players in the program in Germany, is twofold. So on the one hand, we have the academies of the professional clubs that mostly start at under 8, some also start later, but in general, we have this part, the professionally run academies, and then we have the talent-based program of the national FA. That was introduced in 2003 after some disappointing results by our national team, with the attempt to creating a better pathway for players to promote their talent, and also to become just a wider audience, so to give more players the chance to live up to their talents. And in terms of the questions that you've asked, talent ID, so I will talk about the talent base in Leipzig and how we try to identify talent, which is a big challenge. I think we are all clear on the fact that as coaches, we always have to look at two different things when we try to identify talent, which is we can look at the game, then we will see a performance that is locked in that point in time. And then we have to try to judge the potential of the player, which especially at a young age is difficult due to complex influences on the process of the developing players. So our talent criteria, I don't think, are any different from talent criteria around the world. So we're looking for players who want to take the initiative, who are skillful in their technical and tactical abilities, but also they should show some qualities in the psychological sense. So maybe they're very resilient. They don't give up. When they want to get the ball from a corner, they take it quickly, or they take a quick throw in. So quick thinking, that is something that we should be looking for in players, I think. And still being aware that we have a very limited insight. If I'm going to watch a game, I'm not necessarily going to find out who the best player is. So our approach is, as much as we are able to connect with the local coaches and try to get information from them, because they will be able to judge their team much better, which in our case is a challenge because we are 3 coaches at the talent base, but our city has 500,000 inhabitants. So you can imagine that it's impossible for us to even find all the talented players.
All righty. Okay. Let me Lee. Let me get your take on in your club, because it's a different settings. You're at a club. Martin is actually like a federation approach. In your club, what's your take on talent identification?
Yeah, I think in terms of what we look for, in terms of identifying talent and recruitment, it's massive. So you've got the coaches, but if you haven't got the recruitment and recognizing talent to drive the coaching, then it's not going to work. So what we do, we focus a lot on the players coming to us from under 9s all the way up to under 16s, and then from then they go on to have a scholarship from 16s to under 18s. But it's a long road. It's a 12-year journey if you're from under 9s all the way up to under 16s. So you have to get the recruitment right. So we'll get players in from under 7s, under 8s. When they're not signed to us, they're training with other clubs as well. So we kind of have to create a program where it, we're competing with teams in London, big city, a lot of top clubs, but we have to be a bit different. So we focus a lot on our philosophy and a family club, and also a pathway. So there's a pathway for players to go into the first team, and there's theory behind that, and there's proven track record. If you look at it in terms of talent, what we'll do is in terms of recruitment. So having a link between your club and your philosophy and recruitment is massive. So, having development centers. So we'll have 2 or 3 development centers before they go into the academy, so we can have a look at them. Building relationship with grassroots clubs is really big as well, because you want to, you're not always going to get the best players because they will go to the bigger club. Your Arsenals and Chelsea's. So we're looking at players, to develop them technically. So we have to build the link between your philosophy and your recruitment. Okay, so scouts will know our philosophy. So our philosophy would be, what you look for in a player. So again, technical ability, 1v1 domination on the ball. Wow moments. We talk a lot about wow moments. Now, that's wow moments, what a player can do. Comfortable in possession. And it's not always just on the ball situations. It's about, are they a thinker? What do they do off the ball? Okay? Because 95%, 95% of the game is played off the ball. So, are they thinking? What decisions are they making? Are they finding space? And what their awareness is like? So they're the kind of things we look at. And you have to also remember that understanding what is a wow moment. So a wow moment could be a skill. It could be a good passer. It could be a good tackling. And they're the things that we look for in terms of recruitment.
Great. And before I move on to Bart, who's in my favorite youth development country. No disrespect to Germany. No, that is something that has been there with me for a long time. I want to encourage my listeners. If you have a question, you can post them in the chat. We'll ask them in good time. Not in good time, really. We ask them as we go along. So if you have a question to ask, something of Lee. Lee is actually, let me remind you, the listeners just came on. Lee is actually with Queen's Park Rangers in the UK. And Queen's Park Rangers, for my Jamaican listeners, they have a very good pathway for coaches. I have already spoken to 3 coaches that are there within Queen's Park. And our owner, Paul Hall, who played for Jamaica, and Micah Hyde, who played also for Jamaica, Reggae Boys, are there with Lee. So Lee is in good company. I could say they are in good company, Lee, but it's both ways. So let's move over now to Bart. And I said, guys, I can say Lee Hayes, Martin Hamill, but I can't say Bart, whatever. I'm going to allow Bart to give us his second name. And Bart is with Jesse in, and he will tell us exactly where it is. So Bart, over to you. What's your take on what's your position there? What is your role, and how do you look at talent identification and recruitment in Holland, per se?
Yeah, of course, we are. I'm working at a professional club in Holland, and I'm head of the foundation phase of that club. But I know a lot of about the Dutch football and the youth football. But I think it's very important to start with the structure and the culture, because Jamaica is a different country instead of Holland. In Holland, football is the #1 sport, and we have a very good structure to find these talents. Because, for example, we have 16 million people living in Holland. We have 32 professional clubs, and also a lot of amateur clubs. For example, in the country where we are based in the city, in Arnhem, there are living 160,000 people. I have to say it right. And we have 23 amateur clubs. So for us, it's easier to find these players because we have a good and strong relationship with those amateur clubs. So I think it's very important when you have to look to talent identification, that you have a good structure to find these talents. And I've been in Germany, in United Kingdom, I've been in Nigeria. But for example, in Nigeria, it's very hard because a lot of people are living there. So that's the main thing. I think a very good structure is the key of finding good talents. And maybe it's interesting to share our vision on players, or
you can.
Yeah, I can. Okay, yeah. For example, we look to players, who understand the game, and maybe it's hard to say, how can a kid of 9 will understand the game? Now that's what we have written down. Which things you can see at younger age. We're also looking for players who can make their own choices. You can see that on every age. Of course, we look to players who are technical and physical fit, and also have a strong personality. So these things are for our club very important things to see if we are looking for a good, talented player. And that's what I think the main thing. Find players who will fit with your culture, but also with your way of playing, on your vision on football. I think that's the most important thing that I can say about it.
And let me ask you this, Bart.
Yeah.
In your talent identification process, how do you retain? How do you look at? Let me see this the relative age effect and bias banding in that process. How do you approach it, and how important is that to you? I'm saying this from a position that I know a lot of top academies and clubs tend to lean towards that, especially national teams, the relative age effect and bias banding. What is your take on that, and how is it approached by you in your club?
I think it's extremely important. We all know the coaches who will choose the players who will score the goals, the strong players, and who will win the game. And in our club and our culture, we are looking to players who have potential to go to the first team. Maybe not always the player who will win matches for you, but look to the potential of the players. And before the age of 12, it's very hard to look to the biological age, but later you can look and you can measure the biological age. So in Holland, we count the players from January to December. So that's the year how we count the players. And I know, for example, Lee in England, they count from August till August, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Right. It's different in certain countries, Bart. Because the age group sometimes, I know in UK, I think it starts somewhere in September or August, some bits there, right, Lee?
Yeah, September.
Yeah, September. And that's likewise in Jamaica, I think, for the school system in Jamaica. And I know some countries started in January.
Yeah, we start in January.
Yeah, right. So it is. So Lee? Tell me your take on relative age effect and bias banding. How does it affect your program?
Yeah, so basically, I think in terms of the age effect, it's massive. So I think kind of getting coaches to understand, and people within academies to understand the players' birthdays. So from us, we go from September all the way to June, maybe May. So like the schools year, so September to June and May. So if you're someone and you're born in August, you've got that long. That's like nearly a year catching up to all the other players. So if you look at most of the players, well, some players in the academies, they're born September, October. That's a year development. So physically, they're developed within that year. Yeah, so it's really hard in terms of having that. And as long as you understand it, and we're not saying that if a player is not good enough, he's not good enough. But if the player is good and there's a reason behind his physical developing, it's not quite there yet, then you have to kind of take this into effect. And you got to look at stuff. So, with us, we do biobanding games. So we'll do probably 4 biobanding age groups. So basically, the players will be put in their groups in the sessions. and then they'll play a game against other clubs biobanding. So they'll put in terms of their height and their weight, they'll be put into a category, category 1, 2, all the way to 4, and then we'll play fixtures from under 12s, well, some 11, so under 11s to say 15s in terms of them biobanding fixtures. And what we found is that some players, you know, they adapt well to it, and they can perform, where others will, and they'll develop. In terms of the age effect, I think, you know, recognizing players playing down or up has an impact on players' performance, and it's just convincing the parents and convincing the players sometimes. So if you tell the player you're going to play down, they're thinking straight away, I'm not good enough, and it's kind of like, with us, we'll link it into their program. So each player will have an individual program, and then if we feel in that moment you're going to play, well, we don't really call it down, we call it across. So if we've got under 13s that's going to play with the 12s, we'll explain it to the parent, and we'll explain it to the player. And it's not the reason that you're not good enough. Is that the reason that we want to see you shine in this moment, and it's based on your height and weight. So, and you know, it's just convincing coaches and convincing players is the challenge. But I think we're at a stage now that we're used to it, and we've done it for the past 4 years. So, you know, parents are fine with it now.
Yeah. So let me go to Martin now. At the age group that you're with, Martin, does that have any effect, have any relative importance to your age group, relative age effect?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, obviously, like my colleagues mentioned before, in terms of scouting, so you have to be aware that there will be players who are technically more advanced or physically more advanced, but they might not necessarily be the most talented players. So this is something that you have to consider as a coach. I think what makes it worse for us is that we are using 2 birth years in the same age category. So kids from 2005 born and 2004 born will play in the same competition. So you can have an age gap up to 2 years, and that's not even biologically, that's just the age gap in terms of birth date on the calendar. So this relative age effect can be much higher because we have 2 years in the same competition. So that is something that is, I think, not well managed within our competition. And then also something that I found interesting, playing down for us in the region where I am is a big issue. Not that it doesn't make sense from a sporting perspective, but just it involves a lot of bureaucracy. You have to actually physically go to a doctor, and the doctor has to testify, okay, this kid is not well developed. So it's a hindrance, and a lot of clubs, you have to remember, those are local clubs, they're not professionally run, so they are not necessarily going to go all the way to do what's best for the child. They will end up playing against bigger opponents, and in the long run we are going to lose these kids because it's not going to be fun for them to play. So this is a big challenge that I can see, because we are just losing these kids, so we cannot develop them anymore. And the last point that I wanted to take, I think, is the relative age effect in general is mainly due to our competition system. And this is where it's also the easiest way to have an effect to change it. If we come from a results-based competition system in the youth formats and go to a development phase or development-based competition in the younger age groups, then I think it will be easier to overcome this relative age effect, or not let it have this great effect that it has at the moment.
Yeah, I agree, but I know countries, I know UK for instance, they do have their biobanding competitions, right? It has its pros and cons to it, really, you know. But I think the clubs should make that call depending on the type of kids they have, and I find it very interesting because years ago, I was conducting a course in St. Lucia, I think it was, and there was a conversation amongst the players, the coaches in the course, and it was about a young boy who was more talented from his perspective, and others in the room too who knew him, that he's just as good as the 17-year-old boys, but he was actually like 14, and I imagine he had a big body and everything. But I came out with an interesting fact, is that the president didn't allow the youngster to play up because they called it child abuse. And I found it very interesting. They called it child abuse. And I refer to you, say that they have to go to the doctor. The bureaucracy of going to the doctor and making sure that they're capable is something, it's up in the air. But what I like about the situation is that people are trying to work it out to see how we can get the development of players in an environment that they'll be comfortable in. Right?
Yeah.
But before we move on now, Lee, I think there's a question here for you. Can you read it, Lee? It says, hi, Lee. It's from George Davis. I think George is out of Jamaica. Hi, Lee, can you explain the link between the academy and the development center? How does it work?
Yeah, so basically a development center. A development center, so scouts will scout players. And if they feel they're not quite ready yet, so they've got the potential to be, they'll go into a development center. Sorry about that. They'll go into a development center.
Don't worry, Lee. We were warned. Don't worry.
So basically, we'll have 3 development centers. So you have a development center where the scouts will identify the player, where they think, okay, he still needs more developing. So he'll go into the development center. They'll be there for like maybe 6 to 12 weeks, and it's a place where you can put players in and they get the understanding of the philosophy, make them feel comfortable. And if we feel in this moment that they're ready for a trial, they'll go into the academy. If we feel they still need to stay there, then they'll stay there. However, if we think that they've dropped off or they're still not developing, then they'll get released from that development center, and then we'll bring in more players. So it's a kind of a hub to bring players in to have a look at, get understanding of the philosophy, get understanding of kind of that situation in terms of coming into the academy, but without going on trial. Because sometimes what we found is that when we put players straight on trial, it's the pressure situation. Some players can't haven't got that confidence to perform in that moment. So the development center are more suited to some players than others, and it's a good way to kind of keep players in the system and have a look at them and see how they're developing.
So let me ask you. Let me give you a follow-up question, Lee. Is this unique to Queen's Park Rangers, or other clubs take the same approach?
Most clubs in the UK take the same approach.
Okay, all right. So now this conversation about talent identification and buyer banding and relative age effect. Let me go now to Bart. Right, Bart. In all of this conversation, what's your take on choosing selecting early developers as opposed to talent, the potential? Sorry.
I think the hardest thing as a club, you look the potential, because a lot of coaches want to win the game, and you have to have a vision in the club that you find these type of players, and okay, we will not win every game, but we look for players who will have the most potential to go to our first team. And of course, for us, it's easier. We are a professional club, so we can find good players and find good coaches. But it's what Lee says, you have to convince the players, convince the parents in the way of how we work. Okay, we will not win these games, but we look for these kind of players because we think that these players will be the best for our first team in the future. And so it takes more time. It takes more time to develop. And you see the same with our national team. Sometimes we have a very good team, and sometimes a few years we don't have a good team. But we still have talent, but they need more time to go to the first team or the highest level. So it's very important. And what Lee says about the development centers, it's very important. We have the same at our club, and you see more players and you see them a longer time, and that's also important with age effect biobuilding. Just give these kids more time to develop. That's extremely important.
And you want to say something, Lee?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Bart, you're 100% right. So the same as QPR. So our focus is based on the individual. So individual, and then if you develop individual players, you're more likely going to have players develop it into the first team. Now, when you get when they get older, so in terms of the 15s to 16s, that's when we'll focus more on position awareness, position understanding, unit-based training as well. So, you know, I agree with you in terms of understanding the individual and what that individual brings to your program, and making sure, you know, that they link into your understanding of your philosophy. You might get players that in terms of that your philosophy is about 1v1 domination. So you might get some physical players to help the vehicle for the other younger ones or the smaller players that you got. And that's what we've done in the past as well. But yeah, I agree, Bots. That's 100%.
And I got maybe one example. I don't know if we have time, but
well, you have time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, for example, in the 14 team, we have a very big striker. And for that team, it's very nice to have him there, because when he's playing, they win the games. But we say for him, it's very important to play with U15, because for his development, it's better. And okay, our on the 14 team will not be the champion, but he will develop himself into becoming a better player. So that's always the choice that we make for these players. Like Lee said, the individual player is the most important. So team, okay, first team, then the whole team is important. But in the academy, only the individual players are important.
Sorry, Bots. Sorry, just on. Do you ever find it has a negative impact? So, for example, you might put a player up because he's physically developed and technically he's fine, but in terms of the social side and the physical, psychological side, that you can't adapt to it. Do you ever find that?
Yeah, sometimes we have it, but before we make that step to get this player up, we have to check all these things, because, yeah, of course, when he's going to play with older children, some of the children talk about different things that he is used to. So his character is also important. When he's not, fit to that, then we won't do it. It's only for the player.
Yeah, and now, Martin, you're in a unique situation, Martin, because you're not at a club. You're almost at a development center for the DFB, right? Explain what the DFB is for my listeners who just joined. And let me say this, I want to welcome my listeners who just joined. So for the benefit of my listeners that just joined, when you start speaking again, Martin, just kind of tell you where you are from, and you take the question, you answer the question after.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Martin. I'm from Leipzig, Germany, and I coach at one of more than 300 regional talent centers of the National Football Association that have existed since 2003. So this program was put into place in 2003 to offer one additional training per week to talented players that regularly train with other clubs. So as you said, Vin, we are in the comfortable position that we don't even have to make this decision to divide between competition and individual development. We can really focus on the players. So I feel like what Bart has said before, that in this phase you need the right coaches. This is an aspect in talent ID and development that we, for my part, we tend to not speak enough about, because we have to find these coaches who are patient, who don't care about results, who do not want to brag about winning a league on their social media or their WhatsApp status, but who are just comfortable even losing if they know that the kids are going to develop well. And then the second part of this is, where are all the ambitious coaches going? In our current system, the coaches, they want to go up. The under 7 wants to become under 9, under 15 wants to become under 17 at some point. So this is a real danger that I see, because how can we develop a system that will keep the best coaches for the age groups also in the lower age groups, because this is the basis that we want. And then I think the last aspect that I want to add is, for me, it's also relevant to educate the coaches who are not at the top level to do a good job. And we need to put more effort to educate grassroots coaches so that they can put the basis for like a broader basis that can then develop into talent ID and talent development. And if we can get a better job at this, I think we can go much further, like independent of my country. And in terms of what you said, we are in the comfortable position that we can only look at individual player development. The downside is we only have them once a week. So I don't have so much influence as the club. So that's another aspect why the quality of the club coach is much more important than me. So sometimes I ask myself, is this really what I should be doing, coaching kids 1 time a week? Or would it be better to have a broader program to educate more coaches who can then go on to have a bigger reach and educate many, many kids?
So Martin, just got a question. So if you want the coaches, like you said, you want the coaches to be under nines and be proud of being under nine. I think every clubs, every country that you go to, every coach wants to go from 9, 10s, 11s, and all the way up. But once the coach takes the ego out of it, and in terms of want to develop and be the best in their zone and their area, have you ever tried like what we do? We have an under 23s coach. They'll coach in our under 15 and 16s program. So they're working in between. And like for myself, I'm the lead of the 16s to 12s, but I'll be on a Wednesday evening, I'll be coaching the 9s, 10s, and 11s. So we found that we work across phases rather than just that's your phase and stuff like that. And what it gives us is a range of skills that we can tap into as well. So we might, under 23s coach might see, hang on, he see the potential of a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old, and that's where like our team effort and say, you know what, he's worth a chance because he's seen the pathway from players from the 23s to the first team. And the same with myself. So, for example, if I'm coaching the 16s and I'll go to the foundation phase, which is 9s to 11s, I might see a player and think, hang on, you know what, he's got potential. And then then everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's a good concept. I mean, anyway, you will get coaches talking and try to find a different view to even your age group or your group. This will be a benefit. The point that I wanted to make is like mostly the coaches who do the higher licenses, they are motivated to try maybe get a part-time job or even a full-time job. And our current system does not offer these positions with the smaller clubs or even with the smaller age groups. And that's, for me, is just a matter of priorities. So the big clubs, they have a clear priority. It's their first team, and maybe their academies at youth level, but definitely not grassroots level. That's the impression that I get, at least in my part of Germany.
Yeah. All right. So let me get back to this final point on talent identification. I want to go back to Bart because Bart, can you just when I finish your question, you can introduce yourself again to my listeners who just came on. But you made a point, Bart, that I agree with, that where the biobanding has a big influence on development. With that youngster, you say is a big boy, and they win games when they play him. But then your belief is that he should go with the 15s because he's so comfortable running over everyone at the junior level. It doesn't have to depend on his skill level. It doesn't have to depend on any decision-making process. It just barging through the whole teams and score. And I have come across a lot of players like that, Bart, who at a young level, when they're so big, that they were top goal scorers in their competition. And then when they got to the age that they are now 15 and in their age group, you never see them again. Mm-hmm. So is there an importance to you? And I think, coming from where you're saying the player should go there, you think that's very important to have those youngsters integrate into their own body size, the biobanding?
Yeah, I think what is important, maybe introduce myself first, Bart, 35 years old, working at Vitesse, professional club. Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for the foundation phase and also do the analyze for the first team. But yeah, what you said, it's important that you make a plan, what we do at our club, for every player. Mm-hmm. And the example with the big boy, when he only scores goals and winning just because he is strong, then we have to look, okay, what's the best for his own development? Because at the age of 16, 17, we don't see these players back because all the other players are just the same height and the length. So it's very, very important to know on which things you have to bring a player up, or maybe let him bring him down to a team. Mm-hmm. What is good for the player. So I think in most of the clubs they look to the technical skills, the mental skills, the physical skills. All these things you have to measure to know what you do with these kind of players. I think that's the most important thing that I can say about it. And you can measure a lot of things. the biological age, date of birth. You can bring them in situation, all these kind of things. But it depends on what you want with that player.
Okay. And Martin, I have a question for you, and it's from Andrew Edwards. Let me get to the question for you. It's a long question. Andrew talks a lot. So that's Andrew's question is, hi Martin, I studied at the University of Leipzig in 2014. How important is your work to the national development programs? What are the quantitative and qualitative effect of your work with players? And then is there that additional part of it within their clubs and their national programs?
Yeah. Okay. So the age group that I work with, maybe first of all, to make this clear, is under 10 to under 13. So I think it's a big stretch to try to quantify or qualify the national development aspect. We are more looking at really an individual approach, a little bit similar to what Bart said, but maybe not on the same professional level. So we are trying to give the players the opportunity to grow from where they're coming from. So identify their strengths and weaknesses and enable them to work in small groups. So we don't have more than 10 players per coach, in small groups, and based on the educational system that we will talk about afterwards, to work on their weaknesses and work on their strengths. So I cannot say we have produced a player that went on to, I don't know, national level or even a professional club, because I've been working there for 5 years. So the oldest that the kid can be now is 18 since I worked with them. But I don't think this is the main aspect. The main aspect is not to say we are a stage where we will prepare them for elite performance, but we are trying to give them the foundation of reaching their full potential, or hoping to enable them to reach their full potential, while they can then work on that with their respective clubs. So I don't think it's that big of an influence. You have to be honest with yourselves. It's still better to work individually than not to do anything at all. But I wouldn't say it's an influence on a national level.
All right, good. All right, I think we have kind of exhausted the talent identification area. So let's now move on. Let's move to another interesting area. I think that when you think about starting an academy, I think this is an area everybody wants to know. If you're sending a child overseas to academy, this is the first question parents want to know: what kind of influence you have in this area. So let's look at the educational welfare and performance. And I think I would want to start with Bart on this one, right? Just tell me, in your organization, Bart, how do you manage your players' education and welfare needs in your situation? At your club.
Yeah, I think it's important to say our academy starts with the age of 9, so the under 10. Until under 12, all the children will stay at their normal school in the local areas. And we only scout players from around 50 kilometers around Arnhem, so they don't have to drive too much. And from the age of 12 and up, when we pick players, they have to go to our school. We have a cooperation with 2 schools. They are close to our training facility. And also the teachers are in good contact with the coaches. So we think education is one of the most important thing for the children. For example, from every age group, maybe 1 or 2 players will go to our first team in the future. So it's extremely important that we take our responsibility to help these kids and also the parents to let them know that the study and the school is extremely important.
All right, and before I would really like to get this question for you, Bart. Before I move on, I'll get back to this topic with my other 2 guests. There's a question for you, Martin, that I want you to, Bart, that I want you to answer. It's from Solomon Alexander. I know Solomon is in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. So Solomon wants to know, what is the psychological effect on a player who's played above or below his age group? That question is for you, Bart.
Yeah, it depends on the parents. If you have parents who are a little bit well developed, they understand the way, the reason why we do it. So it all starts before you get these players and these parents. Explain, these are the things that we do. because of this, because we think that's the most important thing for the development of your son. And of course, when a kid is playing very well in the under 14 and he scores a lot, it's good for his confidence. But we have to convince these parents and players, okay, you will stay here for a longer time, and you increase your chances going to the first team to play on a higher level, because now you are strong and big and you can push everyone away and you score. Now, on the older age, they are just as big as you, so you have to think quicker. Your first touch has to be better. All these kind of things. So it starts with talking to the parents, convince them, also convince the players, and of course, a big role of the coach. Also explain the group. Okay, these players going up because it's good for his development. Okay, these players going down because we think he's a good player, but he's a little bit small, but it's good for his personal development. So the most important thing that I can say is convince the parents and of course also the player.
Okay, great answer. So let's get back to education, welfare, and performance. We heard Bart's position on that. Can we, Martin, does this play a role in your development in the DFB?
Yeah, for us, it's not really a focus, as we are not an academy or a boarding school, so we don't deal with this. The kids that are come to our talent promotion program, they are all local kids, so they are within the area, within our city, similar to Bart, but not even 50 kilometers. I think the furthest distance that the kid will travel is maybe 25, so like half an hour or 45 minutes to our practice. So they're already in schools and they stay in their local schools. We are not involved with this. The only meeting point that we have with the schools is at age under 12. There's a regional selection of our federal county in Germany that will try to identify the most talented players in order to place them in special schools. But those special schools, they are connected to the talent promotion pathways of the professional clubs and their academies. So they will then develop a curriculum where they can train sometimes in the mornings and then go to school and have another training in the afternoon. But for us at the talent base, this is the only time that we have a connection with this. So we also try to develop players that will go into the selection process, be selected, and then move on to be part of an academy.
Okay, great. So Lee, you have probably a similar situation to Bart as a club. What's your position, your club's position on education and welfare and performance? How important it is to QPR?
Yes, like similar to what Bart said. So our players are not full time. So from under 9s to under 16s, they considered to be part time academy players. So they're assigned to the academy, but they all go to different schools from 9s to 16s. So, similar to Bart's, we try to recruit players which are, probably, a 60-minute journey. So it doesn't affect their education, doesn't affect their time. But, you're going to have players that, in London, you're sitting in traffic for, 45 minutes to an hour sometimes. So we understand that. And then from that, from say 16s, after you've left school, we have a scholarship scheme where they will come into us and they'll be full time and they'll attend the college, which is across the road from our training ground, and they'll be supported through their education. They'll study, I think you study some A levels and sports science as well, in terms of in tune with their training as well. In terms of education, so we'll have direct contact with players from under 9s to under 16 in terms of building up relationships with schools, because we do understand, look, at the end of the day, we understand football is a tough business, and the percentages are low in terms of players moving on. So we have to educate the player in terms of education, in terms of understanding and making sure it's very important. So we'll have that dialogue with the schools, and we have a full-time staff person that does that, and then he'll touch base with myself in terms of the players. Are they performing? What's their behaviours like? Because we at the end of the day, they're representing the club. So if they go into their school and and they're misbehaving and they're not showing the right attitude, it's going to affect what they do off the pitch and on the pitch. So we do trying to kind of be that positive role model and have that higher standards for the and for players. So yeah, we're very big on education.
Okay, and in my research recently, when I was thinking about this topic, I realized in the UK, Lee, that there's a charter for quality that was implemented in, I think, 1997. I read, right, that what they're trying to promote is to have a structured program that caters to the holistic needs of the players.
Yeah.
Are you aware of that charter, or is something that is embedded in your club?
Yeah, so it's if you're talking about the EPPP, so basically it's like a system where a lot of academies focus on individual development. You know, players, you got a system where players are, you know, noted on their game time. You know, their reports are every 6 weeks. You have contact with their learning plan. So every player gets a learning plan. What are their strengths? What do they need to work on? And that's a technical side, tactical, social, and physical. So, you know, that's a program that's been put in by the EFL to kind of help players. And it's also a performance clock as well. So, you know, how many minutes players have, how many training minutes, how many games they play from under 9s all the way up to under 16s. And if the player leaves, that performance clock goes with them. And then if they make it to the first team, then, you know, there's a stat there that shows they've done a certain amount of hours and stuff like that.
So at QPR, I think you and I had this conversation some time ago. QPR will be responsible for this part of the players' education, paid for. You say they get a scholarship. I know you spoke to me about a scholarship already.
Yes. Yeah.
That education process will be involved in that scholarship. They will take care of all of that.
Yeah. So, for example, once a player has been offered a scholarship, they'll attend a college, which is literally 5 minutes from our training ground. They'll do education. They'll get, you know, some do A levels, some do a BTEC, and that will kind of allow a player, if he doesn't make it or make progress, that will allow a player to go to university or continue studying somewhere else.
Okay, great. Now, I think we've covered important areas so far. You know, the talent identification. How, when we get these players into your fold, into your clubs, into the DFB, what kind of responsibility you take onto yourself as a club to ensure that the players' welfare and education is for first and foremost, I think, because I think that once that is, I have always thought that if I can get my players intellectually sound, it's probably easier for me to guide them through a process of development, right? I can tell you this. Years ago, I think I was it was in Mexico, and we had a competition there. We had USA, Canada, and Jamaica was there, amongst other countries. And I remember during a break, our off day, and we were downstairs in the common area, and all the USA and the Canadian players came down with their laptops, and they were, you know, working and doing some stuff on there. I guess it was schoolwork. And I was rudely awakened when I look at my players playing cards, you know, and I'm going, what a difference. It woke me up as to what is happening on the different levels. And I made a vow that on that day that I'll get all my girls to universities, get them scholarship to university so they can start thinking differently. And I like the fact that we are, you know, that's why I brought this to discussion. You know, a lot of people don't take that into consideration. I know we have coaches on here who are involved with academies, and the only thing that would prevent them is they don't have the resources to get these kids in school. But I think it's an area we should really concentrate on. Now we're going to move on to an area. There's a question on here. I'm going to pose a question, and then I throw it over to Bart again, because this is a question that has to do with now what we are deciding on planning sessions. So I'm going to post the question first. I'm going to put up the question first, Bart, and then we go to you, who can take charge of that. So let's look at the question. It's coming from George again. As I said, George in Jamaica. This is the question, Bart. Right? To all coaches, not just to you, but I guess we can start with you, Bart. Can you explain your method of teaching your young players, and over what period per season? Who monitors your curriculum and syllabus? I will start with you, Bart, on this question. I'll leave the question up so you can get to read it somewhere if you want to. But go to you, Bart.
Yeah, it's good to know that we divide it in different age groups, but you start with your vision of football. Your club has a vision. This type of football is what we want to play. Also, your vision on learning, how you want to teach the players the way how you play that football. So yeah, we have our playing style, but also our principles. So the playing style is 4-3-3, you name it, the Dutch football culture. But we have principles in the way how you want to train it. And for example, we have a syllabus for 6 weeks. In week 1 and week 2, we train only attacking. And from attacking, we have 6 to 10 points in a whole year that we want to do with all the players. The same we do with defending, and transition we always take with, for example, attacking to defense, we train it with attacking, and defensively till attacking, we train it with defense. Yeah, sorry, my English. But our syllabus is a 6 week syllabus with different principles. I think I have to say it on that way. Is that a little bit clear for you?
Yeah, well, I think he will be able to answer. I think that's a good answer for him. What about Lee? Lee, you have any take on that same question?
Yeah. So similar to Bart, so we've got a philosophy in terms of how we want to play. So we focus on can players. The first thing is in possession. Second thing is out of possession, and within that we've got little points to reference the players on. In terms of our vision, we want to create. We kind of work on the development pyramid. So it will focus on extreme technique. Starts at the bottom, so that's the foundation phase. So the young ones will focus a lot on extreme technique. So 9s, 10s, and 11s will focus on that. And in between that development pyramid, you'll have the next one is movement experimentation. How does players move? So there'll be the 10s to the 13s. We'll do sessions which targets the extreme technique, movement experimentation, and then movement refinement, and that will be working from 13s to the 15s. And then the next one will be position refinement. So 15s and 16s need to understand their roles and responsibility in their position. So we'll do sessions linked with phases of play, unit work, understanding how players want to press, defending positions, and then we'll focus on attacking players. Like as a winger, what is his role? The first thing is, can he cross the ball? Second thing, can he take on their 1v1s? And each individual will have their plan, and within their plan, they've got little targets that they need to meet or need to work on within them sessions as well. In terms of teaching, yes, the younger ones, you gotta let them play, but also you gotta guide them. So in terms of teaching them, there's guidance, discovery, Q&A, teaching styles. More older players need a bit more commanding style. Tell them what they need to do, and also problem solving as well. And then also the vision is we want to create technical, outstanding players. So they need to be technically good on the ball. So we do a lot of ball mastery, a lot of 1v1s, a lot of 3v2s. In terms of our syllabus, we'll work every 2 weeks. We'll focus on a theme, but sometimes we'll go off the theme. And we'll focus a lot on technical based practices, and then just challenging the players.
Okay. We're getting no feedback here now.
Okay. Sorry, Vin, can you repeat?
Yeah, you can hear me, right? Still?
Yeah. Okay.
So let Martin.
Yeah,
you're in a unique situation, Martin. But I'm going to ask you just the same, because would that question apply to you? Would you training once a week?
Yeah, definitely, because we all work in a similar way, not exactly the same, but quite similar. So we have educational blocks that are derived from the game model of our first national team, but broken down into smaller units to allow for age-adequate adjustments. So we will have 3 main topics. One is scoring goals, the second one is creating opportunities, and the third one is keeping the ball resistant against pressure. And within these 3 topics, we will work on smaller units. So for instance, with scoring goals, you will have a subunit of 1v1 offensively, which will automatically involve 1v1 defensively, because you need 2 players, so you can teach both of them. And in terms of methodology, we try to use as many small-sided games as possible to allow decision-making for the players, because I think that's a point where we lack often in kids training. We do a lot of executional drills, but we do not allow them to observe the environment, understand, then make a decision, and then execute. So this is what we try to implement. And also, as Lee has mentioned, Q&As, so try to involve the players, not giving them the solution, but trying to guide them to find the right way. And also being patient with mistakes, so trying to develop a culture where mistakes are seen as a stepping stone and not so much as a failure, in order for them to understand that a failure will only enable you to reach higher if you try again. But I think in our format, it's a little bit easier. The challenge, as you mentioned, is that we only have them once a week. So there's only so much we can do. And with the monitoring question, I think the second part of the question, theoretically, there are regional supervisors who are supposed to monitor us, and we have a system in place where we address what we put in a database. But I think in a realistic approach, it's more down to the coaches to be keeping track of what they have been doing. And I think it's also meaningful for the coaches to know that they have some kind of freedom in designing the sessions. So they're not totally fixed. It's not that you get a session and you have to do exactly that, but it's more like you get the topic and then you evolve a session, you discuss with your colleagues, and maybe if you're not happy with the results, you can repeat a similar session in the next week. So it's not completely fixed. You are still free to some amount.
All right, man. Thanks, George, for the questions. So that will lead us into what we want to talk about now. Not player selection. Let me move on. We discussed player selection already. Let's go to session plans. We'll finish up on this area of the game. I think I want to throw Bart, you're in charge of the foundation phase, which I imagine is what, 6 to 11? Is that the same age group that you're in, 6 to 11 years old?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, because I hear some clocks.
Some noise is inside the background. Where it's coming from, really?
I think it's the Big Ben in London.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the man in London. All right, so yeah, my question to you was, I want you to go over session plans in that particular age group, that 6 to 11 age group, your foundation phase. Lead us into, based on the question that George asked, I think it leads us into that area. What's a typical session? I don't know if it's a fair question, Bart. I don't know if it's a fair question, but try your best to take me out of that question into the sense that how would you approach a training session for this age group, foundation phase? What is involved and important that you pay attention to?
I think the most important thing is that we not talk about tactics, but that we talk about the technical development of young players. Mm-hmm. And of course, we want to trigger them and bring them in situations that they can learn. But Yeah, I will always start with skill games. So technical drills, we call it the curve games. Dribbling, passing, kicking, all these things, very important in that age group. And also important, we start with 1-on-1, 2 against 2, but also 2 against 1, 3 against 2, so that they can make some choices in the games that they play. And yeah, but I say as a player, a former player also, always end with games, small-sided games, 4 against 4, 5 against 5. These things are also very important in that age group, but we think it's important.
Yeah, you want to take it from your Lee?
Can I share my screen?
Try. Let us see if it will work out because they will give us a little problem. But let us see if we can share.
Can you see it?
Not yet.
No, I don't think it's working.
No, it's not going through.
No problem. Okay. Okay, yeah. So for me, so in terms of session plan, so the first thing I'll look at when developing any session or any age group, because I work throughout the phases as well. So I'll do different types of sessions. So first thing I'll question myself is, I ask myself, what do I want to get out of the session for the players? How do I do it? How can I do it in a way the players will learn and hopefully enjoy it and have fun? Sometimes players, the drills or practice that you do, they're not going to have fun, but as long as they're learning and they're developing, and I find that with the older players that could occur. Why have I decided to do this practice, and does it achieve the outcome I want it to achieve? Yeah, so you might do a session and sometimes the outcome's completely different than you expected, and it's about reflecting on that and improving the session or improving the group. So you might do a session and it looks very like a playground, and you're thinking, players are learning. And sometimes coaches, you want to step in, you want to coach, but at the same time, the players are learning. So sometimes it's best to step out of the session, observe, and then coach. And that's what just my understanding. In terms of where we always look at the focus of the individual first, and can you link the individual to your practice? So, for example, if you're working, you're doing a possession type practice, and you've got a centre back in that practice, what is he getting out of it that's going to help him progress? So, if I'm looking from the 15 and 16s in that session, is he working his fundamentals in terms of his 1v1s? Okay, in that possession type session, is he working on his receiving skills? Is he working on his passing skills? But the main thing is he actually defending in that practice? Because then you want that to scaffold to the session that you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So we always know, like what Bart said, we always focus on technical practices. So we've got set moves or set core skills, we call it, that every player in the academy from under 9s all the way up to under 16s will do in the first 20 minutes or for half an hour of a session. And the way you do that is you start on the basics, then you work on advanced skills. And every player knows them skills and them patterns. Then we'll go into a possession type practice or skills practice. With the older ones, we'll focus a lot on possession. It could be 5v5 plus 3 players. Something that's going to link in. So you got to scaffold the session. So if the theme is, if we're focusing on finishing within that, or passing within that middle start, the bit of the session, it's got to link into the end part. And like what Bart said, we always finish with a game. With the older ones, we might finish with a phase of play, and really kind of focus on getting the individual details out of the session. Also, within the sessions, with the older ones, we'll focus on a phase of play with, say, 14s to 16s. The 12s to 13s will focus a lot on set practices. So, I think Martin on it as well, is that, we have a academy director, Chris Ramsey. He's developed the program, which has been very successful in terms of developing players and developing pathways. So we have got set practices that the coaches have to follow at times. But within them set practices, you can be, that's where the teaching and the learning comes out. So, there's a 4-goal game that we will do with the younger ones from 12s to 14s. And within that, you've got, you can work on your awareness and making sure that you're challenging players with different outcomes. But the main focus is getting individual detail out for the players.
Okay. Bart, I'll come back to you, Bart, before I go to Martin. You, in the foundation phase, because I hear Lee mentioning phase of play. In the foundation phase, how do you approach that in teaching the youngsters or getting across them what are the phase of plays? Let me hear your take on that, because can it be a little bit too overwhelming for the players, or if not, how do you approach it?
Yeah, and with what kind of way do you mean it? Because of course we have our principles and the way of playing and the way how we want to develop the players.
Right.
But what we do with every important thing, we make training sessions and we share that with each other, and we try to link that to that age group. And some of the exercise you can use for every age group, the simple ones, 3 against 2, 4 against 3. But some of the exercises are too hard to do for the younger kids. But the most important thing that Lee says, that the children learn, that they have fun, and that they get freedom to be creative. I think that's also a little bit the Dutch culture. Sometimes we say you have to do this and this, but you also have to explore the exercise, and that's also a way of development. As a coach and as a club, you have to make exercises that children can be creative and that they can explore things. So yeah, I don't know if you understand that, but that's a little bit the way how we work.
Yeah, I understand that. I know oftentimes, like for instance, transition is not something that is taught right away. It's just in position, out of position.
But some of the times when you talk about transition, we say, okay, try to collect the ball as soon as possible, because don't call it transition, but try to speak the kids' language. That's I think it's very important, and the children can do more and than you think. That's what we see a little bit in Holland, and yeah, maybe sometimes also our culture. We always want to know why, and that's also with the young kids. They always want to know why, coach, why we have to do that. So yeah, sometimes it's not good. For example, when you are from Russia, you want to hear left or right, but in Holland we always want to know why. Right. That's our culture.
Right, I know. It's part of the DNA.
It is.
Yeah, it definitely is part of the DNA. All right, so Martin, give me something about your training sessions on the day, because you only have one day.
Yeah, but I'm in the unfortunate position to be speaking after the 2, and it's going to be quite similar, so there are not that many changes there. But I really liked what they said, and I want to also highlight this. So for us, it will mostly look like we have a selection of sessions from a database that we can choose from. We are also free to develop our own sessions, and it will look most of the time similar. So we will have a warm-up or a getting there phase, where we also try to use a multi-sports approach from time to time. So we will let them play frisbee, for instance, ultimate frisbee, something that they're not necessarily doing in their club, just to get them also exposed to other sports. In this age group, I think it's still relevant. And what Bart has said, I can only add to that. So we are trying to create a session that will help them to develop their talent, but that should also be fun. And fun for kids, I think also for adults, involves small-sided games and scoring a lot of goals, or at least having the opportunity to score a lot of goals. So this is also the approach that we are taking. And maybe a bit more specific, we try to design a practice where we would have a game and we focus on a certain topic. Then sometimes we would go into a drill that will extend the learning in this topic, and then going back to a game to try to put whatever you have learned in the drill, if you have learned something, back into practice. And maybe to finish, I think what Bart has said resonated so much with me, because as adults, we are quick to underestimate the children and also underestimate the development that they are making without us. Even if we just let them play, they will still become better football players, and sometimes much more so than if we always tell them where to go, where to pass, or where to shoot. So I think it's also an important aspect as a coach, like Lee also said, to take a step back and at the end of the session, really just let them play freely without intervention. That is something that probably, like, also me, when I started coaching, I didn't do in an amount that's reasonable in that age group, and where a lot of coaches can relax themselves a little bit more, especially at the end of the session.
Great, man. I have not a question, but a comment from a coach who was in an American system, right? He's a good friend of mine also. But he made a comment on, as soon as he come, I don't know if it's up as yet, guys, because my frame was frozen a bit. Can anyone see there is let me get it back up now. That's it. Everton Edwards, who was actually a college coach in Florida, with female players, and is in the UK. He's based in the UK now. No, Lee. But he says when you, and this is an important point, because it's really true. He said when recruiting a student athlete, college coaches look at academics when evaluating every recruit, and this also crosses over to the student understanding of the game. So this is kind of underpins what we were talking about, and about having the youngsters in an educational system. That does it. All right. So actually, this has brought us to really the end of this live. Really wanna say thanks to Bart from Holland, Martin from Germany, Lee Hayes from the UK, giving your perspective on your own take on but what happens in your own environment. I'm hoping that my listeners really understood what's happening in different countries. I think it's important that we understand, how coaches approach. And I think if you look at it overall, it's the same. It's just how you apply in your own environment. I was talking to Bart earlier before the show started, and he was saying, "Hey, it's going to be different in Africa. It's going to be different in Jamaica, but the methodology." And tell me if I'm wrong. The methodology should be the same. It's just a different how you plug those things into the methodology. That's my take on it. So I think this is a very, very, very fruitful conversation. And I hope that we can do this again, maybe another time with a different topic, and get just sort of flesh out some more of what happens in academies, and we had two clubs and we had a federation from a federation standpoint. Martin, as I said, only had a chance to train once a week. I want to ask this question because I plan to ask and I keep forgetting. Bart, how many times a week do you train in your club for that age group, for your foundation phase?
With the under 10s, we train 3 times a week. The same with the 11s and 12s. Mm-hmm. And the older they become, the more they train. But they also go to school, so we have the possibility that they can train in the morning and then go to school. But from the age of 12, so it depends on the age group. But with the younger kids, we train 3 times a week.
Okay. How about you, Lee?
Yeah. So the 15 to 16s we train 3 times a week and play a game on Saturday. The 9s to 14s we train 3 times a week and play on a Sunday. And then the older age groups from 17 to 18s we train Monday to Friday and have Wednesday off, and they have a game on a Saturday and have Sunday off. So that's the schedule that we have.
Okay, great, man. All right. Again, Bart, thank you for coming on. I know, I just say my youth, all the things that I learned about youth development started with Holland. And yeah,
Makes me a little bit proud.
I did one of my first youth course in Philadelphia with the KNVB, and I brought KNVB to Jamaica to do courses there. A couple coaches on here were part of that development. Let me see. I have one more. I think either comment or a question. Let me see. No, somebody just saying we need more sessions. We will have more sessions coming, coaches. Everton says excellent show with varying and positive explanations. So that's kudos to you, my guest. We will be on again live, coaches, next week. We're going to be talking to a FIFA players agent that will discuss the importance or what happens to players when they go overseas and sign a contract. So look out for that. Same time next week should be. Lee, thanks so much for getting Bart on board. To my German Jamaican friend Martin, thanks for accepting the invitation to come on. I will talk to you guys soon. I think it's important we keep the link going. And Bart, would you be adverse if one of my coaches want to get in touch with you just to maybe bounce off some things from you about your development? Also, Lee and Martin, would it be okay if they can contact you?
Always.
And maybe they can fly over, especially to Holland.
Maybe when I can fly over to Jamaica when it's winter here.
Yes, definitely we'll have you on. All right, it's good to have you guys. Take care, stay safe, right, and hope to do this again sometime soon.
Thank you, Vic.
Have a nice day.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.